So Donald Trump won the election. Now what? This is the Option Podcast, and I'm Melissa Franks, your host. And today we are going to talk specifically to you, the female business owner or the female intrapreneur, if that's who you are, about what to do now. Now, I don't typically talk about politics on this podcast. In fact, I think I have never, ever, and may never, ever again talk politics on this podcast, but this moment in time is too important for us to just ignore. So I am going to be speaking to you pretty off the cuff and pretty raw today, specifically around what we can do, women in business, now that this decision has been made by the population of the United States of America. If you are celebrating in the streets because we have another 4 years with Trump, then this probably isn't the podcast for you. If you want to hear what I have to say, though, please stay tuned because I have some suggestions for you, the woman in business, about what to do next. I want to go back in history a little bit. In 2016, I voted via absentee ballot. I live in California, so that was a thing back then. And the reason that I did was because I had a 3-week trip to Europe that was going to coincide with the US election. Flew, I think, the Sunday before Election Day, and I had gotten myself situated in London. I had had my first day of business. I went back to my hotel room that night. I watched the coverage on BBC, which, let's be very clear, it's not US news. So if you ever have the opportunity to be out of the country and watch election results for the US presidency happen, I recommend it because how the rest of the world views our election process is fascinating and eye-opening, and then what came to be incredibly horrifying. So I went to bed and Hillary Clinton was winning, and I was ecstatic. We were going to do the right thing for the country. Trump was a slime ball. We already had kind of the inklings of what was to come and what was to unfold over this next 8 years around who he as a person actually is. And I got up the next morning and she had lost. And I was horrified. And that was the first time in my life and all of the presidencies that I had voted in where I had gone to bed thinking one thing was going to happen and woke up with something else happening. I had never experienced that. For the most part, the elections that I had seen were a landslide, even when Obama won in 2008. And I went downstairs to the restaurant to have breakfast, and I ordered my breakfast, and immediately the waiter said, "Are you American?" And I said, "I am." And he said, and cover your children's ears if they're with you right now, "What the hell were you thinking?" He blamed me for electing Donald Trump to the presidency. And let me tell you, over the next 3 weeks that I was in Europe, every single person I came into contact with, whether it was somebody on the street, whether it was a taxi driver, whether it was a colleague in a business meeting, the first thing that they said to me was, "What were you thinking?" They were angry at me. There was open hostility at me. Europe was up in arms about this decision. And it was the first time that I had this other look at what the world thinks of the United States. And now at the time I was incredibly naive and I was like, things will be fine. Nothing in politics moves really fast. We'll just have to suffer through it. We've had jerks in office before. It's not the end of the world. And what we all now know to be true, because it has happened, is that it was quite catastrophic, his time in office, and catastrophic specifically for women. There can be a whole bunch of debate about whether he's good for the economy or he's bad for the economy, whether he runs the country well. I don't even want to get into it. I am talking to the women today. And if you are listening to my podcast and you follow me on social media, then our views are relatively aligned and you are still here. So I know that you are. And his presidency started in motion the elimination of our rights. Rights that in some cases we have had for significantly less than 60 years, significantly less than 30 years, significantly less than the life of the millennial generation. the rights began to roll back. And as a seasoned executive at the time, it was horrifying. And I also felt incredibly safe. He can do what he wants. He can make weird policies, but I'm fine. The stuff that's happening in Washington isn't going to really affect me. And then Roe v. Wade was overturned. And for the first time, as a parent with 3 young boys, I became scared. I became scared for the future in which one bad decision, one mistake, one accident could change the trajectory of their life in a way that they did not intend. And I want to be really clear that from my perspective, an unplanned pregnancy is the responsibility of both parties 50-50. I want to be really clear that a miscarriage affects and is the responsibility of both parties. However, a woman's decision for what she wants to do with her body is always her decision. So as much as I, a parent of 3 boys, am incredibly scared of a world for which we currently live in that has abortion bans and the rollback of Roe v. Wade and a president that is now going to put in office potentially 5 more Supreme Court justices, I'm frightened for their future. And I'm grateful that I don't have daughters. And we'll get to that in a minute. So we saw through President Biden's presidency the impact of a Trump presidency. And so when this election cycle came and it looked like he was leading again, I did what I didn't do in 2016. I spoke up. I got loud. I donated money. I participated. I talked to my children. I was emotionally invested in the outcome. And then when, surprise of all surprise, Kamala Harris became the leading candidate when Biden stepped down, the level of excitement that I had that we could return to a country that was led by hope and joy and optimism overwhelmed me. And this is where I need to articulate why, because I'm going to give you business tactics in a minute. This backstory is so incredibly important. You see, what was going on during the Trump presidency and the Biden presidency is that I was living in an abusive household. And nobody knew. Nobody knew. And based on all of the advice that I had been given and based on all of the things that I had seen out there in the world, look at Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Look at all of the things Donald Trump has gotten away with. I could list on and on. Look at how long Sean Combs was able to perpetuate violence against other people with thousands of people knowing. Look at Epstein. I could go on and on and on, right? That was a world that I lived in. So as somebody that is a survivor of domestic violence and abuse and was living literally in harm's way on a daily basis during the Trump administration and the Biden administration, I was too scared to leave. And I had the ability to do so. No fault divorce exists. But what I did know is that nobody believes women. They just don't. The court system doesn't believe you. In fact, in family court, and if there are no criminal charges filed, the victim is the one that has the obligation to prove. The victim is the one that has to continually testify and explain and provide documentation and evidence. The victim is on trial. And I knew all of this. And then my world changed in 2023 and all this came to light. All this became public knowledge. There is now lots of court records if you want to go look and see what those are. And I am in a protracted legal situation that I can't really talk to all you about right now. One day we will talk about it. I share all of that because I was so invested in Kamala Harris winning this election because I knew if she did, then the possibility that I would continue to be able to have my own bank account, to be a single, not married mom, to be a female business owner, to own assets, to be heard and understood and believed that the abuse had occurred was possible under her presidency. And so as I watched the election results come through, and as it started to look more and more like before I went to bed that she wasn't going to close the gap, I went to sleep and I hoped and I prayed that I was going to wake up just like I did in 2016 and the world was going to flip on its end. And unfortunately, when I woke up to the news that Trump had won the presidency. I had woken up to the news that the most racist campaign in U.S. history won. I woke up to the news that men that are openly saying to women, shut up and sit down, that are openly telling women that they should just get spanked and it's going to hurt us way more than it's going to hurt us and not hurt them at all, to the men that are convicted of felonies and can still go free. I woke up to that world. I woke up to a world in which all of my hopes and long-term viability was at extreme risk because the country said that his way of rule, his way of treating people, his way of being was what they wanted. And I didn't want to get out of bed. I was in the funk of all funks yesterday. Today is Thursday. The election was Tuesday. I don't even know when I was that last disappointed and dejected and frustrated and worried. I think that the overwhelming emotion that I had was concern and worry for me, for my children, for all of the women that I know that are younger than I am, who literally put their lives on the line every time they make a decision to get pregnant. It made me worried about whether any of the future generations are going to be able to afford to live at all. And that worry was overwhelming. And I didn't know what to do with it. It was so overwhelming, I couldn't even talk about it. And if you know me, that you know that's really rare. And so last night, as I was doing everything I could to get myself out of the funk, the one thing I had to remind myself is that we don't quit. We don't quit. And so the point of this podcast today, the reason that I'm recording this, the reason I'm talking to you, the reason that I've gone on this historical rant for 14 minutes just about, is because I want you to know what I'm going to do next. And I want to give you an invitation, you, the female professional, you, the female business owner, you, the corporate employee, whoever you are. I want to give you an invitation to take one or more of these action steps too. So as I was wallowing yesterday, I didn't want to call it wallowing. I was literally mourning the loss. I was grieving. It's like, I bet you I'm still going to go through all of those steps that one normally goes through. And today we're just on an optimistic upswing. So you're getting the benefit of that. I stopped and I thought, so what's the biggest FU? What's the biggest FU that I can do in light of this disastrous outcome? And it's not going on social media and trying to convince anybody of anything different. It's not talking poorly about the party or the president-elect or the vice president-elect. It's not saying angry. It's not saying bitter. It's definitely not giving up. So what can I do? And the very first thing that I made a decision on personally is I'm going to continue to fight. I am going to continue to speak my truth. I'm going to continue to stand up for justice. And what that looks like specifically is to follow this family court process through to whatever the next steps are. I am not going to say conclusion because I guarantee you that for the next 7 years until my youngest child is 18, this will not conclude. But I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for what is right and what is true and what is safe. And when I can, I'm going to be incredibly transparent about it to as many people as possible because I know that there are thousands, if not millions of women that are in the exact same situation that I was in, and they need to know what to do next. And so the commitment that I made to myself is when the timing is right and when it makes sense, I'm going to get loud about domestic violence and living in an abusive household and what you can do. You, the woman who is in my circumstance, not the one that we all see on the TV, but who was the breadwinner, who was the one making all of the money, who was the one outwardly to the world in control, what she can do to get herself safe and her kids safe. So that was the first thing, is I doubled down. I'm not letting them win. I'm not letting them suppress my voice. The second thing was the best way that I can revolt against this rollback of women's rights is to be incredibly successful and to ensure, this is 2 and 3, that all of the women around me are incredibly successful. So what does that look like? It means that I don't give up what I am doing professionally. It means that I lean in, using Sheryl Sandberg's words, to what I am doing professionally. It means doing everything that I know that works. It means running the ads. It means recording this podcast and doing the YouTube channel and continuing to create 1-minute videos 5 days a week so that you can all get the advice that you so desperately need. I'm not giving up, because I can tell you that with a successful business, with me being financially secure, that sends a message loud and clear that I get to claim a seat as a part of that 1%. And when you're a part of that 1%, you have a much louder voice. And so that's what I'm doing. The third thing, like I said, is that I am reaching behind me and to the left and to the right of me, and I am pulling up all of the women that are with me. This is a time when we find a way to uplift each other. This is when we find a way to help each other. This is when we find a way to double down. You see, the more women that are successful, the more difficult it is for them to suppress us. Not only do we have an obligation and a need to secure our futures, we must continue to alter the paradigm and make a path for those behind us to follow. As painful and as frustrating as it is right now, and how bright a light is being shown on the fact that most of the country, or at least those who vote, want to see women's rights stripped away, we don't have to let them do it. We're half of the populace. Half. We don't have to go quietly. And the best way for us to stay loud is to band together. And so my third action is that I'm going to continue to offer help to anybody that needs it, whatever that means. You're in a state with an abortion ban and you need somewhere to stay. I live in California. You are struggling in your business and you're not sure what to do. Let's have a conversation. You're working with somebody in your business and you just don't think they're the right fit and you need a recommendation. Let me know. You're having a difficult time at your job and you need a reference to go somewhere else. Let's talk about it. You want somebody to look at your resume. I don't care what it is. We need to stick together. We need to help each other. And if you are a man that is still listening to this 20 minutes in and have not jumped ship, guess what, dude? You are an ally. By being here for 20 minutes listening to this, you have self-identified as an ally, which means that you have the ability to reach around you and pull the women up with you. Your voice right now is stronger and louder than ours. So use it to propel women's rights forward. Use it to lift the women up around you. Use it because we're going to need your help. The next thing that I'm going to do, and this might shock all y'all, is I'm going to spend my money. But I'm spending my money with women-owned businesses. I'm not going to panic and hold on to it and hide it under my mattress. Nope, that's not what I'm going to do. But what I am going to do is I'm going to ensure that when I am spending my money on things, that it is going to businesses that are owned and run by women. I'm going to be discerning about what I do. In fact, and this is a true story, and I do not mind saying this, before all of this hullabaloo, so like back in June, I was looking at cars for my 15-year-old. And one of the cars that I was considering was one that Elon Musk manufactures. And I'm so disgraced by what he's doing that I just can't do it. I just can't. It's a little bit tricky because all cars that are manufactured are inevitably in conglomerates that are run by men. However, what I can do is I can figure out whose politics best align with mine, who are most likely to protect women, and then I'm going to go from there. I'm going to use my buying power to communicate my values intentionally and long term. This isn't a small business Saturday sort of situation. This isn't Black History Month in February where we only buy from Black-owned businesses in February. No, I am now using my buying power as much and as frequently as I can to buy solely from women businesses. And I won't stop there, because if I find it challenging to find a business that a woman is running and owning for whatever goods or service I'm trying to buy, that's okay, because then we go minority owned. We go LGBTQIA+, right? I'm going to be discerning. I'm going to stop the arbitrary spending just, for whatever it is. And all of you are thinking, but Amazon's so easy. You know what it is? And you know what? There is a ton of small shops on Amazon. So look them up, figure out who owns them. You can get what you need from Amazon as long as you make sure that it's from where you're aligned. So that's the next thing. And then the last thing that I'm going to be doing from a business perspective is I'm going to be building generational wealth. And I'm going to be building generational wealth on purpose, because I want my boys to be able to say, I got this from my mom. I want my boys to be able to say, I got this from my mom. I want them, for generations to come, to be able to point back and say, that matriarch, she's the reason that we have the life that we have. Her hard work, her determination, her fight, her grit, her success, that has paid it forward to us. Because the stories, the narratives that live beyond us are what are going to change the landscape in future generations. If my children are able to tell their friends and their children about their mother who was successful in business and therefore had this and that and this, and then if they are able to have their children tell their children about the great-grandmother who did the thing, the more of those stories that exist out there, the more that generations to come are going to be looking for the women. They're going to be looking for the leaders and the business owners and the leaders of industry. You see, the actions that you take right now, today, if they are intentional, will cause a very small ripple. And that ripple will make waves in future generations. So as frustrated as I am, and as much as I told my children that we were moving out of the country because, dang it, I still kind of want to do that. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want my kids to live here anymore. I'm embarrassed. I'm disgusted. I got a whole lot of adjectives. But what I have now is I have a fire in my belly. I have a plan on how to take action. I have a way through what I know how to do best, which is business, to revolt. And I'm not letting them take my rights away. I'm not letting them take the rights away from future generations, because it will impact my children and my future grandchildren in a way that I don't want to have happen. As painful as this next 4 years is going to be, as difficult as it may be to be an entrepreneur who has to pay for all of the things themselves and doesn't get big corporate tax breaks, what I can say emphatically is that by being successful in my business, by helping other people be successful in their businesses, other female people specifically, other those that identify with other genders or no gender at all, by lifting them up, by bringing them forward, by giving them room, by giving them the tools, by all of us banding together, by creating wealth, it gives me a voice and it gives me influence, and it starts the ripple of change. I will not be the victim anymore. In 2023, I made a very large declaration that being the victim was done. I am a survivor of abuse and domestic violence, and I will be a survivor of what the country is doing to women right now. Mark my words. So I want to invite all of you to look at what you're doing right now and figure out how, with the loudest voice that you have, which is your business, your profession, how you can do things differently going forward so that you can propel your values, so that you can stand up for what you want to have happen, so you can have an influential voice when decisions are being made. You have all of the tools. So instead of doing what I was doing yesterday and wallowing and feeling bad for myself and feeling, like there was no options and it was hopeless, start to look for opportunity. Start to look for solution. Start to look for who you can help. I guarantee you, if you help one person, you're going to feel better. So for those of you that stayed all the way through this, I appreciate it. We will not be talking politics going forward. This was so devastating for me personally. And I didn't know how I was going to report a podcast this week, to be honest, yesterday. When this revelation came to me last night, I thought I have to get it out into the world, and I need to get it out now, and it needs to be timely because we have the fight of our lives on our hands. And I don't know about all y'all, but I'm not letting them win. So until we meet next time, where we're going to talk about businessy things and not the election, please know that you are wise and you are strong and you are brave and you are capable. And I believe in you.